search is obviously a really big thing at Google. We live and breathe everything around websites and web search. So that's a really big topic for us. Search used to look like this. Screenshot is a little bit older. It feels a bit foreign to me now. But search has been moving forward quite a bit, evolving together with the rest of the ecosystem, constantly adapting to modern user and publisher needs. So things are really changing in search. And the functionality available to developers and publishers to highlight their pages, well, your pages, and the pages that you work on, that has evolved similarly. While it's still possible to appear like this in search, you can also do so much more now. Really cool stuff. And with that, our tools have also made big jumps in the last year. Again, this is an older screenshot. You might remember this tool. And look at the progress that's been made in Search Console to make it easier for you to create fantastic websites that work really well in Google Search. So today, we take a step back and review the state of the union with an eye on developers and publishers. So for you and the people that you make websites for. We'll start very briefly by looking at how modern Google search works. It's important to understand the basics so that it's clear where these aspects fit in. And then we'll look at different aspects that interact with search, such as images, structured data, and of course, Search Console. So, Martin, why don't you take it away with an overview of how search works?
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, John. I think that's a good idea. So before we go into all the new cool stuff that we have in store for you, I think it's a good idea to look at search a little more in depth. If you think about it, it's just this input box, and it looks pretty simple, right? You just like type in your query, and then you get a bunch of results. Done. However, if you look at it from a developer's perspective, it's a little more complex than that. There's a lot of things that have to work together to actually make search work. So, I mean, generally speaking, as a web developer or a publisher, you can just assume that things will work automatically. But you can help search, and not just Google search, you can help search engines understand your content better and make things run a lot smoother. So basically, what are the things that you should look at, and how do they fit together when it comes to search engines? Well, let's start with something that you hopefully all have. If not, then I'm not exactly sure what you're doing in the session, but we have plenty of cool stuff for you to look at anyways. If you have a website like this is interesting for you to be in search, right? But wait a minute. So when I say website, the web has evolved a lot. What do I mean when I say website? Let's have a look at what websites are when it comes to Google search. So anything that we consider a website in search has to have a URL somewhere on the web. That makes sense. We're a web search engine. You should have some content on the web somewhere. And this content should not just be hidden away behind a login or something. Search works for everyone who might not even have a login yet, who might become a customer but isn't a customer yet of yours. So you want to make sure that it's publicly accessible, right? Which means not necessarily everything that is publicly accessible has to be in search, right? You can tell us to not do that. You can tell us to stay away. There's methods like the robots.txt or the meta tag for no indexing. You have the possibility to opt out of this, obviously. We are nice citizens of the web. We don't force you into this. And also, you want to make sure that once people actually see you in search and they come to your site, they can actually access their content. That spans things like be able to view this in every modern browser, but also look at things like performance and accessibility as well. So what are examples of websites? Well, you have the classical, typical HTML page. These are perfectly fine and a great way to have content hosted on the web. But also things like progressive web apps. As far as we're concerned, a progressive web app is still a website, so you'll be fine. These things can be indexed just as well. Generally speaking, web applications that are more dynamic and using JavaScript are also websites from our perspective, right? And that includes things like AMP, Angular, React, Vue, Ember, all these other things, Polymer, lit HTML, whatever you use to make websites these days is basically still a website at its core. So how does Google Search get involved? Well, we have our little friend here, Googlebot. Googlebot is basically busy continuously browsing the internet, more or less, right? So like crawling, all these pages that we have and we want to index in the web. Currently, that is over 130 trillion pages, right? So that's a lot of pages, so it's pretty busy. But what if I basically then create a new homepage? It's a brand new site, just put it online, but Googlebot is still really busy crawling the web. So it doesn't really know that your website has just come online and is now theoretically available to be indexed. So how can I get my website known to Googlebot? Well, there's a few ways. The most typical way is something on the internet that we are already looking at and crawling is linking to you. That tells Googlebot, hey, there's something new that you should definitely take a look at and crawl. You check this out. Of course, there's other ways, and we're going to talk about them in a bit, but you can use this to tell us, or like someone can use this to tell us about your website. But there's also things like you can submit it in Search Console, and you can use other things, other means that we're going to talk in a second. So now Googlebot has found this link, and now knows about this one page of your website. Let's say it's the home page. Someone linked your home page somewhere, and we come to your home page. What Googlebot now does is it looks through all the links that we find in this page that hopefully leads us to the rest of your website. It's the internal links that help us understand what else is there on your website that we should definitely take a look at. I mean, this website is wild. Cars, planes, and even a boat? I mean, come on, that's a pretty cool website, and I think this is really important that we like crawl this. And look at how excited Googlebot is about that boat. I mean, wow, holy shit. And this is just the beginning of this relationship, right, John? We are just starting here. So basically, what you want to do is you want to help us find all the great content you put on the web, right? So to sum this up, basically Googlebot needs to have a reference to your website. Typically, that's a link that someone else, recommends, or like someone goes like, this is great content, you should check it out. But you also want to make sure that you link us to all the other pages. You should have some sort of internal linking structure and some sort of page structure that tells us what the rest of the website looks like. And last but not least, if you link, use a link. This shouldn't be rocket science, but I think it's worthwhile calling this out. This is a link, it has an href, and that is a URL in that href. Good link, A+, right? So please give us proper, unique URLs for your site so that we can actually discover and crawl them properly as well. Also, if you don't want us to do that, if you would like some things to not end up in search, please use the robots.txt to tell us so. We will respect that and help you not have something in search that you don't want in search, right? Also, if you want us to discover, links are not the only way to make sure that we see content on your website. Another possibility is to upload an XML file, for instance, to Search Console, or tell us there's a sitemap with all the URLs that you consider worthwhile discovering for Googlebot. Also, if you have RSS feeds, you can give them to us using a thing called WebSub, and then we basically will start crawling your RSS feed entries as well. If you have structured data, and you're gonna talk about structured data later, right? Yeah. So we have structured data for jobs and live streams. If you are doing live streams or have job offers on your website, you can use an indexing API to tell us about these as well. Last but not least, if you're really excited about something new that you put in and don't want to use the other ways, you can also literally go into Search Console. We're going to look into that tool a little later and add it manually in Search Console. All right. Now, discovery is just the very first step. As I said, it's the beginning of this beautiful relationship, right? But it might take a while for us to actually get around crawling. 130 trillion pages plus, and I mean the web keeps growing. That's a lot of stuff for Googlebot to look at. So we can't just immediately do that. So it'll take some time for us to come to your sites and web pages to basically crawl them in. But don't worry about that. If you're worried about if we have discovered it already, use Search Console to see that we have discovered it, when we have crawled it, and when we will crawled it last time. So you can use Search Console to learn more about that. But we'll talk about that in a little more detail later. OK, now when I say crawling, I wonder if there's web developers in here who are like, OK, but what is crawling exactly? And does that work with my web application or PWA, right? Well, crawling very fundamentally is an HTTP request, but your browser does it. It's a GET request to the URL that you provided us or that we discovered. And that is great for websites that are just HTML. But modern websites are actually not just plain HTML. They look more like this, where you basically have a very bare-bone HTML structure that loads JavaScript, and then JavaScript generates the content on the fly. So how do we actually get that into our index? How do we understand what the content of this website actually is? Well, for that we have to render. Now, rendering is a whole different can of worms, and it's a beautiful topic with lots of interesting details. We have a session on that at 1:30 together with someone from the rendering team, with Zoe, my lovely coworker from the rendering team. Stage 3, if you want to join us for that, or check out the live stream later, or the recording if you're watching this on YouTube. Definitely worth learning more about rendering. And there's one thing that is quite cool that I would like to take away already, but we basically go in much more detail later, and that is that we are now actually using a modern Chrome in Googlebot. So Googlebot, it has been the #1 thing that you all asked us, right? You asked us, hey, when do we get the latest Chrome? What Chrome version is this? Why can we not have the latest Chrome? When is it coming? Will it be updated? All these questions, we listened. We took them very seriously, but we also make sure that we have a good strategy in place and that we have a sustainable strategy in place as well, and you don't have to worry about things anymore. So that's why we decided to not only update to the latest Chrome, but keep it evergreen. So that's the big news here, really. This is not just a one-time update and then you have to wait again. We'll keep continuously updating Googlebot with this new Chrome releases coming out. Also, there's a blog post if you want to learn more about what that means to you as a web developer or publisher. Highly recommend checking that one out too. Right. I heard a lot of people, we announced this in the dev keynote really briefly, and a few people asked us questions already. Not a few, a bunch of people asked us really good questions. I love these questions, keep them coming. But the #1 concern that is underlying all these questions is, do I have to worry about this? What does that mean for me and my site? Is this a problem? And I can tell you, no, don't worry about it. It's cool. We will not just start using the modern Chrome. We have been doing that beforehand. We have very carefully tested on an increasing number of sites. And today, I'm happy to announce that if you have a URL on the web that is being crawled and rendered, it is rendered with the modern Google Chrome. So no worries about that. We tested this out very carefully. Also, we keep monitoring rendering carefully, right? If something goes wrong, we'll probably be very quickly to notice that and fix that as well. So don't worry, we have you covered. And also, if you want to learn more about the user agent, a few people have seen, you're still seeing the old user agent. That's because we don't want to break sites that don't know about this yet. So we'll give you a heads up in Google Webmaster Blog, so stay tuned on our blog whenever we are about to change the user agent. So please prepare your sites. Do not hard code the user agent exactly. Use something like pattern matching to be a little more flexible. But basically, we will update the user agent, but we haven't done that now because we want to make sure that we're not breaking your content. All right? Cool. If you want to learn more about that, as I said, please join us 1:30 p.m. tonight. It's going to be fun. All right. So that was very brief, and the session is going to cover more details. If you are using JavaScript frameworks, not everything will just magically work now. A lot of things have been fixed. We have over 1,000 new features, but